Good evening, everybody. If you don't mind, I think you probably heard already that one of the things about us professors at Hult is that we like to get close to our students, and prospective students. So if you don't mind, I'm going to get off the podium and move a little bit closer to you. I hope I'm not going to offend anybody who's sitting in front of me. The second thing is I don't believe in ex-cathedra presentations. Okay, at Hult, we believe that all of our students have the right to challenge all of the professors. And that goes for me and that goes for this presentation. So I would hope that this little time we get to spend together is not going to be all one way. If you have something you'd like to say or something you'd like to add, do me a favor, stick your hand up and we'll make sure we get you included in the conversation. Does that make sense, everybody? Is that everybody comfortable with that? Okay, all right. I think there's a lot to be learned from each other. Another little comment I'll make before I actually start my presentation is that over the course of my career, I've been fortunate enough to teach at a number of the world's leading business schools. I'm not going to advertise them here. That's not our purpose. However, what you might find useful is if you're trying to figure out whether you want to go to school at Hult or somewhere else, I'll be around. And if you'd like somebody who's actually taught at some of these other schools to be able to give you some feedback on why X school is different or whatever, I'll be more than happy to kind of share that experience with you. Okay? All right? I'm a marketing professor. And like most of the professors at Hult, I'm also a marketing practitioner. I'm an entrepreneur. I have several companies of my own, one of which is a marketing consultancy based in Washington, D.C., but I have a few other activities as well. And I think this is one of the major differences that you'll find between Hult and a lot of other schools, is that many of our professors are actually running businesses of their own. So not only do they have a fair amount of academic baggage that they're carrying with them, but many of them have understood the pain of meeting a payroll. And for those of you who've run a business, I guess you've been there. I like to say to people sometimes, you don't really know what running a business is until you have to meet your first payroll. Correct, madam? Right? Okay, so on that note, obviously, if there's any input I can give you folks there, I'll be more than happy to. I'm one of the professors at Hult in Boston who works on our entrepreneurial track. I'm one of the first people to encourage our students to go out and make money for themselves. Right? I've always felt that if you're smart enough to make money for someone else, then you just might possibly be smart enough to make money for yourself as well. Right? So on that note, let me get started. Let's see if my technology is working here. Yes, it is. Last year, Hult was kind enough to provide some sponsorship for a book that I recently published called Massaging the Mind. And the material that I want to share with you here is drawn in part from the book. Now, I don't have very much time here with you this evening, so I've had to cherry pick a little bit what I want to talk about here. But let me ask you guys a question, and you ladies a question. Have any of you ever purchased a piece of clothing, a pair of shoes that you never wore? Does that happen to any of you? Stick your hand up if you're guilty. Don't be shy. Oh boy. Okay. A number of you. All right. I'm going to try and explain to you why you did that. Okay. Let me ask you another question. Has it ever happened to you to go into a store, make a purchase, a pair of trousers, a suit, maybe a new purse, new pair of shoes, you pay for it, they package it for you, and on your way out the store, you notice yet another pair of shoes, right? And you're saying to yourself, wow, those shoes are really cool. I wish I could take those home. Those are awesome. Has that ever happened to you? I mean, you haven't even worn the shoes that you just bought, and you already want to get another pair. Now, are we stupid or is something else going on here? Okay? I want to see if I can explain to you what that's all about as well. Here are some products. Now, a friend of mine wrote a book in 2008, so I know it's a little bit dated, but actually the year is irrelevant. Okay? A friend of mine wrote a book a few years back, and I want to share some of his findings with you. What you see on the left is a list of different products, which I'm sure you can all read, and on the right, you can see the price of those products in US dollars by weight. Okay? Everybody with me here? All right? So if we look at this one, we can see that, a pound of air was free. Okay? A pound of apples was $1.60. A pound of Starbucks coffee in most supermarkets and at Starbucks was $12. And believe it or not, some 9 years later, it's still $12. So at least there hasn't been a lot of inflation on the Starbucks side. Okay, let me give you a few more. A luxury car, an LS650 from Lexus, $20 a pound. A laptop computer, a Dell computer, $204 a pound. Whoa, $204 a pound. Drop down to the bottom. Perfume, samsara, basically some alcohol with a few essences added to it, and they sell it for $930 a pound. Fake Columbia University diplomas. You like that one? I thought you might get a giggle from that. They're available on the internet, and you can buy a pound of them for $1,000, which is a lot cheaper than a Halt education, but nowhere near as valuable. Okay? Gold bullion, $14,000. Prozac, $63,000 a pound. Heroin, ecstasy, a Botox injection. There's an interesting one, Botox. Not exactly the product needed by everyone, but look at the price of Botox, $141,000 for a pound. Okay? Let me ask you guys a question. Anybody notice anything here? Let me maybe scroll back and flip through this one more time and maybe see if any of you can tell me what's going on here. Have a look real quick. I think, is there one more? Yeah, there was one more. All right, so we'll start with free, and we'll work our way through. Anybody notice anything? Yes, sir.
The most essential aren't as valuable.
There's a mic there.
The things that were most essential weren't as valuable as the ones which weren't.
Absolutely. I mean, let me back it up. On the first slide here, there's food and air and water. The things that we really need are basically free, right? And the things that we don't really need, in some cases, cost an absolute fortune. Now, if you think of that in terms of classic economic theory, something's a little bit wrong here, right? The things that you need and are absolutely essential, one would think would be more expensive, right? And the things that you don't need would be cheaper. And here we're seeing the inverse phenomena. So it begs the question, what the heck is going on? Anybody notice what's going on? Anybody? Let me back you up just let me move forward because we're back on the first slide. Now keep your eyes peeled and see if you notice anything. I've already mentioned the inverse relationship. Let me see if you notice anything here. Maybe back it up a little bit. Now let's keep going. Anybody notice anything? Could we get the mic to the lady in the end over there, please? Or the lady standing up? Yeah.
Actually, the demand for the previous products is more. So the market, the people who are buying that are more compared to the products towards the end. So if they want to make a profit, they need.
Okay, so basically your argument is volume, right? The earlier ones sell more and therefore, but then one would think, again, that if they were really needed and really wanted, they'd have a higher price, not a lower price. Any other ideas? But you're on the right track. I see another comment. Hi.
Hi. I think it's about one is that rareness of the product, and that is unique. Branding of the product. Second thing is that something which supply is less. So obviously the prices will be higher side.
Okay, that's our kind of classic supply and demand economic argument. the fact of the issue is that some of the things here that are relatively expensive are commonly available.
Another reason may be that the kind of customers they have a high index of income.
Okay, that maybe the segment of people who are buying that particular product happen to be higher net worth individuals, and so they have more money to spend.
Yeah,
And then these
correct.
companies want to take as much of that money as they can get,
Yeah,
if I
so
understand
these three
correctly.
can be the reason as per me.
Okay, all right. That could be an argument. I would submit something else to you. Oh, no, of course. Let me lend you the mic.
Could I be a student for a moment? What about scarcity? Some of them are harder to get or even illegal.
Some of them are harder to get and some of them are illegal, but a lot of the illegal stuff is relatively easily available. So, why one would like to argue scarcity because they are, in theory, illegal, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not readily available, right? Everybody with me here? Okay, I don't want to pick out any particular products there because I don't want to offend anybody. So I'll let you guys use your own. I see some smiles here. Okay, I'll let you folks use your own imagination there. Comments, sir? Yeah.
Does luxury cost you more? Luxury?
Let me answer that in about 5 minutes, if I may. Okay, it can cost you more, and it usually costs you more. To a quick answer. Okay, and I'll try and give you some reasons why that is the case. Let me flick back to the beginning very quickly. This is the last time I'll put you guys through this. Okay? Have a look again. All right? And as we get to the higher priced goods, which is basically some of these and some of these, particularly that one, I don't think that anything up there on this particular list is absolutely essential. Except maybe the last one for people who would really like to have children, right? So the question is what's going on? And I would make the following argument, which is what I call the pleasure principle. Okay? People are willing to pay almost ridiculous amounts of money for things that make them feel good. You guys with me here? Okay? Has nothing to do with the fundamental utility, right? Does it make you feel good? And if it makes you feel good, whether it's a new Gucci bag or whether it's a new Rolls Royce or maybe just a bottle of water on a hot summer's day, right? You'll probably be willing to pay a fair amount of money for that. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Now, those of us who work in the field of marketing, we've known this for a long, long time. And we use this to laugh all the way to the bank, as I like to say. I was a practicing marketer for many years. And I got reasonably good at it. But I realized at one point in my career that I was kind of like a Formula One driver. I was a pretty good driver, but I didn't necessarily know how the mechanics of the car worked. You guys with me here? And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe I should stop practicing and doing it and just making money and helping the companies I was working with make money, and maybe dig a little bit deeper and try and understand what the fundamental motivation was. Okay? And that was the reason for the research in my book, and this is part of the research there. Let me share some things with you. This is a gentleman, Edward Bernays. He wrote a book called Propaganda back in 1928 already. Okay? In those days, he was already a consultant to what in those days was called Procter & Gamble, now known as P&G. Cartier, the luxury firm. GE, or General Electric as it was called in those days, the United Fruit Company, now known as Chiquita, was also one of his clients. And as a matter of fact, when the United Fruit Company overthrew the government of Guatemala, they hired Mr. Bernays to come in and convince the population that this was actually something that needed to be done. Think about that. Think about that. Okay? And what did he say? The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Whoa, wait a minute. I thought democracy was about everybody having their own opinion and being able to express that opinion in the ballot box, right? What he's saying is no, none of that. Okay, there are people who need to handle that. In other words, now, a few words about Mr. Bernays. He did not like most people. Okay? He felt that most people were short-term in their thinking. Does that make sense? He felt that most people were fundamentally selfish. That makes sense? He said most people, in the long run, are more interested in their own personal well-being and perhaps that of their families than they are in the well-being of the society at large. Does that also make sense to you? So his rationale was, well, if that's the case, how can we rely on an uneducated population to make intelligent choices in a democratic society when it comes to the people who will govern us? Somebody needs to tell them what to think. Enter CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, the New York Times. You guys all with me here? That's what the media business is all about. Okay? Edward Bernays, we refer to Mr. Bernays as the godfather of the public relations movement. Okay? Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government which is a true ruling power of our country, the country he was speaking of being the United States. Okay? Mr. Bernays single-handedly, and I guess this is not perhaps necessarily a positive claim to fame, but single-handedly doubled the size of the cigarette market in the US, basically minting millions of dollars for his clients, or his client at that time, that was a company called Lucky Strike. How did he do that? He convinced women that it was socially acceptable to smoke cigarettes. Okay? I'll leave it to you to do your research to find out how he did that, because I've only got a limited amount of time with you guys, and I'd also like to encourage you to dig a little bit deeper here on your own. If we have some time after my presentation you want to dig into that, I'll be more than happy to share that story with you. So, this is the birth of consumerism. This is where we marketing people, this is where we dance. Not so long, most Japanese people would have rice and tea for breakfast. Now they have coffee and cornflakes, just like a whole lot of other people in the world. And both Kellogg's and Lipton's are very happy to see that situation be the way it is. Now, what that was is a video about a gentleman called Aristide Boucicault. And I believe that those of you who would like copies of the presentation will be able to get copies of the presentation. That video is really long. It's a BBC presentation, but I wanted to include it so you could take it home. And if you're interested in what I'm talking about, have a look at it. It's well worth taking a look at. So one of the things that I got into was, why do people want stuff? And I discovered that there's an area of psychology known as the psychology of desire. I wasn't the first person, obviously, to have asked this question. From Campbell, we discovered in 1987 that consumers are said to never be fully satisfied with their purchases. Dreaming of owning the product often appears to be more pleasurable than owning. Has that ever happened to you? You've thought for months about this wonderful product that you want, or that new car, or whatever it was, and the minute you buy it and you take it home 48 hours later, it's like, ho-hum, more of the same. Right? I see some smiles. I see some of you have been victims of this just as I have. Okay? Okay? Let me back this up. I kept pushing the wrong button. Desire equals specific wishes inflamed by imagination, fantasy, and longing for transcendental pleasure. So for all these, say, 18 to 30-year-old young men who want to buy a new car because they need transportation, we show them pictures of the new car in a very prestigious location, usually with some very attractive women around it. The notion being buy the car and all the rest of it comes with it as well, right? I'm sure you've seen this. I'm sure you, and we're doing the same thing in the States for ladies now, because in the US now, more women buy cars than men. So now you see the lady getting out, and she's checking out this really cool looking guy who's getting out of that new Buick Encore. I mean, we're using the same techniques, we've just flipped it. Okay? It is the symbolic value of objects which we desire. Not the object itself, but the symbolic value. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Everybody here has probably heard of Ralph Lauren. Yeah? Everybody here also is familiar with Ralph Lauren's polo shirts, right? Remember not so long ago the polo shirt used to have a little polo guy on it? Right, just a little guy, and some of you probably have them at home. I'm sure half of the audience here, half of the guys in the audience probably have a Ralph Lauren polo shirt, either a real one or a counterfeit one, right? And then a few years ago, Ralph Lauren's team said, hey, you know something? We've almost saturated the market. What do we do to get people to buy more polo shirts? And you know what the answer was? Make the logo bigger. Okay? So we went from little pony to big pony. And some might be saying, well, why would that be important? Because they noticed something very particular about the male mentality. Men have this little thing trotting in the back of their heads where mine is bigger than yours seems to be important. So the fact that I have a bigger pony and you have a little pony means obviously I'm cooler than you are, and I'm 2017 and you're 2014. And I bet there's some people in here who have the little pony who nonetheless went out and bought a new polo shirt with the big pony. I'm guilty. I stand accused. Okay? It worked. Why? Because it's the symbolic value. It wasn't that anybody needed a new polo shirt. It's what the size of that logo said about you and your ability to spend another $100 or another $120 on another shirt that you really didn't need. I see some people smiling. Psychoanalysis, and I'm not a big fan of a big friend of Sigmund Freud. He was an interesting drug addict, to put it mildly, cocaine freak. But he did say the odd, occasional intelligent thing. And one of the things that he said was that psychoanalysis, which is Freudian-based, obviously, suggests that we try and satisfy our emotional desires through consumption. Anybody here, when you get depressed, you go shopping? Does that happen to anybody? You break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you change your hair, change your car, change your apartment, change your wardrobe, right? I see a whole lot of smiles on this one. Sound familiar? Okay. What we're trying to do, obviously, is make ourselves feel better by consuming various types of products. Desire is interwoven with dreaming, and a consumption dream is the mental representation of objects that consumers desire. Whoa, wait a minute, where are we going with this? It's about selling dreams. Nobody wants to hear about reality. We all get up every morning. We have to face reality, whether it be good or whether it be kind. We don't need anybody to sell us reality, right? We have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So we sell you dreams. We sell you ideas of what could be. And we do that very effectively. We do not so much seek satisfaction from products as pleasure from the illusory experiences which they construct from their associated meanings. Okay, it's not about having a shirt. It's about having a big polo pony that says, I'm current and I'm cool, and you're not. Okay. This is my favorite one of the quotes. To desire is to be alive. Okay, wanting things is human. It's part of our makeup. Okay. Anybody ever meet anybody who didn't want anything? Some people want billions, some people want millions, some people are happy with a few hundred thou, but the bottom line is almost everybody wants a few dollars in their bank account. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I should say a few crores in their bank account. Huh? Now I have to do a little bit of self-criticism here. This slide is taken from a lady by the name of Naomi Campbell. Oh, it's Naomi Campbell. Naomi, oh geez. Talk about a Freudian slip there. Her name is Naomi Klein. And Naomi Klein believes that we marketers are horrible people. We spend our time convincing people to buy things that they really don't need, often with money that they have. And she thinks that that's really, really horrible. Maybe she's right. She says that we marketers have two big lies. One of them is that above average products can compensate for below average traits. So in other words, if you're not a very nice person, I hate to use the word, but let's say you're fat and you're ugly like me, okay? What do? You go out and you buy a Ferrari. Or you go out and you buy a Porsche, and then everybody forgets about all those other attributes because they're just so impressed by that really cool car you have, or that really cool house you have by the beach. You guys with me here? Right? Does this all make sense to you so far? Hopefully so. Okay? Right? The other one that consumer promotes is that products offer a cooler, more impressive way to display our desirable traits. Now, that's an anthropological term, right? Desirable traits. Basically, desirable traits is what attracts you for the most part, I'll keep it basic here, are the things that attract you to the opposite sex, right? This is basically about mating, okay? We're not talking about kind of modern, I'm talking about really primal drives here, okay? In the old days, I'm part Sierra Leonean. My dad's from Sierra Leone, so I spent a lot of my life in West Africa. And back in the old days, if we wanted to impress somebody in the village, I'd go kill a deer or whatever, put it over my shoulders, bring it back, take it to the hut of the woman that I was interested in, drop it in front of her hut, and basically do a Tarzan, food, you, me, good, right? The notion being, I'm going to look after you. I can provide for you. I'll be able to provide for our children. You guys with me here? Nowadays, you don't have to go out and kill a deer or shoot an elephant or whatever. You just go buy a Porsche GTR 3, pull up, honk on the horn. She gets the message right away. We're doing the same stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just human. What has changed, perhaps, are some of the techniques that we use. Now, let me give you an example. One of the buttons that we push in marketing on a regular basis is the narcissism button. Okay, for those of you who might have studied, a little bit of Greek mythology, remember Narcissus? He was the Greek god that used to look at his face in the water and say, "Oh man, you're so hot. You're too sexy for your shirt." Okay? And so we have attributed now certain behavioral traits in the name of or in the honor of that particular Greek deity. So there's a book called The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. If we have any physicians in the audience, they will recognize that. That is the book that psychiatrists will use to diagnose you as being normal or abnormal. Okay? Now, narcissism is about selfishness. Okay. Anybody in here not selfish? Be honest. Just checking. Didn't see any hands. Arrogance. Anybody in here not arrogant? Oh no, you're all just here because you want to go to a pretty good school, add a few letters at the end of your name so that somebody will say, "Ooh, you got an MBA, you must be the man." But we're not arrogant. Oh no, not us. Okay? Exceptionalism. This is one of my favorites. If you were really lucky, some might say unlucky. What's your name, sir?
My name is Akil Mishra.
Akil Mishra. Maybe you had parents who said to you, "Can I just call you Akil?" No, Akil Mishra. Maybe your parents said to you, "Akil Mishra, there's something you need to know. You're not like the other children. You're special. You're mommy and daddy's little prince." And I'm sure you all, or many of you, would have heard that, right? Right? How special you are. Right? That's what we call exceptionalism. Okay? I'll come back to that in just a moment. Or maybe I won't come back to that in just a moment. Exceptionalism. You guys familiar with the company L'Oreal? They sell products to women, and one of the reasons that they've been telling women that they should buy this is why? Because they deserve it. Right? You see what button they're plucking on the narcissist list there? You with me? They're actually pushing a couple of those buttons. All right? Exceptionalism, a sense of entitlement, admiration seeking. Okay? Anybody familiar with Dr. Maslow will know how important that is to our sense of well-being. Success fantasizing. Oh boy. How many in here are dreaming of being the CEO of some huge company? Some of you are, I know. Oh, a lot of hands. I hate to disappoint you, but the research shows that unless you start your own company, you're not going to make it. You know why? Not because you're not smart, but the research from Fortune and Forbes shows that the average CEO tends to be over 6 feet tall. There's a reason for that. It's what we call the big dog phenomenon. Okay? And well, if you're interested, I can explain that a little more about that when we're done. Grandiosity, victim mentality, emotional instability. Anybody in here emotionally stable 24 hours a day, 365? Heck no. So the bottom line is that we're all narcissistic. The only question is to what degree we carry that narcissism. You guys with me here? Now, if I know this, and I know that many of you have these traits, just think about how easy it is for a marketer to push those buttons to get you to respond. And this is just one character trait, narcissism. There's a whole bunch of others that I could roll out that are equally useful in terms of getting people to respond the way you want them to respond. And for us marketers, generally that means getting people to buy the products or the services that we are selling. Still make sense, folks? Cool. One of the things that we do in marketing, for better or for worse, and we can debate that kind of after whether it's good or bad, right, is we sell the dream. Okay? And what's very interesting is when you study psychology, which I have, believe it or not, when you study psychology, what you will discover is there are certain things that will influence how people perceive you and behave towards you, and there are other things that really don't matter very much at all. What are the things that matter? Your size. Okay? Anybody in here ever had a conversation with somebody who's much taller than you, right? And you spend the whole time looking up at them while you talk to them? How do you feel? Superior or inferior? Generally, it's a little bit like I'm the little dog and he or she is the big dog. Okay? So size affects you. Shape affects you. Okay? I used to be 110 kilos. I'm now about 80. So back in the day, there was about this much more of me. All the way around. Do people treat me the same way that they did then? No. Particularly women. I'm single, by the way, so just I don't want anybody to think I'm saying horrible things about my ex-wife here. Okay? Shape matters. Age matters. We don't treat 7-year-olds the same way we treat 21-year-olds. We don't treat 21-year-olds the same way we treat 50-year-olds. And in some countries, the way you treat people because of their age is prescribed socially. Okay? In my country, Sierra Leone, we have certain ways that we are supposed to behave towards people that are older than us. Doesn't matter whether they're rich or poor. The fact that they're older than us and that they have somehow survived in this little world of ours deserves respect. Try that in the U.S. Okay. Sex. Right? We treat men differently from women. If you look at what's been going on in the U.S. at the moment with all the sexual harassment cases and in many countries, it's very clear that men and women are not treated the same. We have another issue in some countries, for example, Germany, Holland, and in some parts of the United States, where we have now introduced the possibility of having a third gender. Okay? Familiarity. Yeah, we feel close to people that are like us. Birds of a feather flock together. Attractiveness, that's another one. Boy, if you're attractive, if you got it going on. As a lady said to me in my class in Boston, very attractive blonde lady, she said, "Professor, I never got stopped by a cop that I couldn't talk my way out of." She had certain assets that I think the rest of us would appreciate if they were in our little basket of goodies. Let's put it that way. Okay? Attractiveness is also interesting in the media. I've always found that interesting. Ever notice how the people in the media are always drop-dead handsome, drop-dead gorgeous? And if there are any quote-unquote less attractive people, they usually do the weather. All right? These are things that research shows will influence how people behave. Let me ask you a question. Anybody here seen a Ferrari in the last year or two? Put your hands up if you've seen a Ferrari or a big Porsche or whatever, right? Wow, okay. Let me ask you a question. You remember the car? Yeah, remember the color of the car? Remember the face of the person who was driving it? Nope. So that idiot went out, spent $250,000, $300,000 for a car, hoping he would impress everybody, and nobody even saw his face. They were more interested in the Lamborghini than they were in him, right? Whoops. Okay. Anybody remember? Anybody know what kind of watch your boss wears? And can anybody tell me what brand of underwear your wife or your spouse or the person closest to you was wearing yesterday? The brand of socks? And yet we put so much attention into stuff that in some respects is meaningless, but we convince you it's really important to have an H on your belt. Or you're less than human, right? The fundamental delusion. We sell the dream, and boy, do we do that very, very well. In many societies, there's also a fetishization of youth. It's cool to be young. Young is energetic. Young is positive. Old is dated and faded and running out of energy. As one of my students in Boston said recently, "Professor, we don't need old people anymore. We got Google." Oof. I mean, in traditional societies, old people were supposed to be the repository of wisdom, right? We could carry on and share our experience with the younger generation, except nowadays our experience probably isn't terribly relevant to what they're going through. Okay? Google hasn't been around long enough for a lot of old people to understand what's actually going on. Okay? And forget about talking about block. I'd be like, block what? Okay? Material clues are viewed as more relevant. This is a very American phenomenon, right? You go to the United States, go to New York, and you say, "Hey, you know Bill Carney?" Somebody says, yeah, I know Bill. They say, "What's Bill like?" And they'll say, "Oh, Bill teaches at Halt. Bill likes to wear suits. He drives ABC car. He lives in XYZ neighborhood." In other words, what they're going to tell you is all the material trappings of me, as if those material trappings actually define who I am. You guys with me here? Okay. Nobody will ever say, "He's got a good heart." Years ago, and I mean years ago, a gentleman by the name of Thorsten Veblen, Danish guy, wrote a book called The Theory of the Leisure Class. Okay? And in that book, he said, "Listen, you guys, luxury goods are not to make you happy. Luxury goods are intended to display how rich you are. It has nothing to do with happiness." Let me give you an example. You guys know Paul Allen? Paul Allen is one of the founders of Microsoft, along with Bill Gates, so obviously an extremely wealthy man. He had the world's largest yacht, okay? Over 70 meters long. Helicopter pad in the back, and inside the yacht, 4 smaller boats that could deploy whenever he wanted to go for a little ride. The Sultan of Oman, or is it the Sheikh of Oman? I guess it's the Sheikh of Oman. He saw Paul Allen's boat, and in true male form, mine has got to be bigger than yours. He built one that was 73 meters long, had 2 helicopter pads, and basically looked at Mr. Allen and went, "Nah, nah, 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 nah." So what did Mr. Allen do? You know it. He commissioned yet another yacht. I believe it's called Octopus. You can check it out on the web. 2 helicopter pads, 7 boats inside, and a submarine. inside the boat. So he can sail his yacht out, the bottom of the yacht will open, the submarine drops in the water, and he can go for a cruise in his submarine. And then come back and park it, and then go off in one of the other 7 boats that are in there. Now, when I say 7 boats, I'm not talking about little boats. I'm talking about small yachts. And so he got to turn around to the guy from Oman and go, na, 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 na. We do this kind of stuff all the time. Luxury goods are acquired to display wealth, not to increase your happiness. From what I hear, Octopus only leaves the port twice a year. It costs him over $2 million a year just to park the boat that he only sails twice. Okay? High price is a benefit, not a cost. Why? Because the high price guarantees the product's reliability, not of being able to do the job, but of indicating to the rest of the world that you're rich. Okay? And we use these tools in marketing. This is how we push people's buttons to get them to buy our stuff. And he mentioned that there were 3 basic approaches. I'll give you, this is my last slide here, so I'll give you 3 quick examples here. 1, conspicuous waste. This is a gentleman or lady who drives a Hummer in the city. You guys know the Hummer? It's an American military vehicle, right? It's used for chasing people through the mountains and whatever. You don't really expect someone to drive a Hummer in New York City or downtown Delhi, yet they do. You know why? Because a Hummer gets 7 miles to the gallon of gas. So when you drive a Hummer, basically what you're announcing to the rest of the world is, hey, guess what? I can afford $200-300 a day on gas, and you can't. Nah, 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 nah. And it's not even comfortable. Okay? What we call conspicuous waste. When they had the recent conference on climate change, right? Not this most recent one that Donald Trump pulled up, but when they had the earlier one in Switzerland, what was really funny is that the vast majority of the people who came to that conference flew in on their own private jets. Private jets are one of the most polluting things that we can put in the air. Climate change. Oh yeah, you guys, sure, okay. Conspicuous waste. Nah, 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 nah. I got a plane, you don't. And if you do have a plane, guess what? I have a Falcon and you only have a G5. Conspicuous precision. These are my Swiss friends. I'm Swiss as well. Lived in Switzerland for a long, long time. In Switzerland, we are making watches. We are making the very expensive watches. And we are not making them with a machine. We are using the hands. We are cutting all the very small pieces by hand. Many small people working all night long to cut the small pieces to make the watch by hand. And then you can buy the watch for only $300,000. And then you can show all your friends, look, my watch. Many small Swiss gnomes working at night to make my watch. Conspicuous precision. And then the final one, conspicuous reputation. This is branding. Okay, and you all know the power of branding. You've all been victimized by branding. I just want to give one example here. I have a friend in the UK, and he's got a really big beer belly, but he likes to dress well. The problem is that his stomach hangs over his trousers, okay? And he's a big fan of Hermes. Now, I don't know if you guys know how much a Hermes belt costs. It's like $1,000 or more, depending which belt you buy. So he spends his day pulling his trousers up over his bulging stomach simply so people can see the H, or the H, as they say in the UK, that they can see the H, so they know he's got a $1,000 belt, not a $10 belt. You guys with me here? If you've ever been to Beirut, that's the land of conspicuous reputation. Okay? What I've done here, hopefully, over the last few minutes is giving you some insight into some of the inner workings of marketing. I teach a class at Hult called Understanding the Customer. It's one of the classes that I teach, and I can trust me, we dig a lot deeper than this, right? Some of my students have referred to me as Professor Sauron. For those of you who know the Lord of the Rings, I'm the Lord of the dark side of marketing. I'm the one who knows how to get people to do what I want them to do. And if you come to our school, I'll teach you how to do it too. And I think on that note, I'll turn the stage over to someone else, and thank you very much for your patience with me. Do I have time for a couple questions here, Surya, if ever, or are the music's going already? Any questions or comments? Anybody wanna? Yes, sir.
So what's the exact reason of those, the rates difference? As I answered, luxury is the main answer, or what's the answer?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question. Maybe take that mic. Let me make sure I understand the question before I answer the wrong thing.
You showed us those slides with different rates, right?
With different prices.
Right. So what's
Yes.
the real reason for those difference in the rates?
The real reason is that people, as I said earlier, can be manipulated, or let me rephrase that, influenced to pay ridiculous prices for things that they don't want and they don't need simply because we make them feel that it will make them feel good. Okay? You feel better driving in a Mercedes than you do in a Fiat 500. The truth of the matter is they'll both get you to your destination. Okay? Only one will get you to your destination with a whole lot of other envious people looking at you, you hope, going, wow, I wish I had a cool car like yours. Okay? Partial answer, sir? Any other questions? Points of clarification? Yes, sir. Here, let me lend you my mic, and then.
Some of the books that you mentioned were about 100 years old or so. Do you see those principles changing with millennials coming in to the market, or they remain same as they were 100 years back?
I love that question because people seem to think that somehow millennials have come from a different planet. They don't come from a different planet. They may have a slightly different value set, and the brands that they buy may be a little bit different than the brands that the Generation Xers or the baby boomers buy, but there are still some brands that are very much tailored and aimed at millennials. Airbnb, for example. Okay, I can go on and on and on. So the bottom line is, are there differences? Of course there are differences between generations. But the one commonality is that we're all human. And so as long as the buttons that we're pushing are buttons that are common to most human beings, they're going to be successful. Okay, much as some millennials might like to think that, and I was recently at a presentation, and I guess the average age of the audience was between maybe 22, 23, and 35. And there was a lot of discussion about brands and and all of this, not being influenced by commercial ideologies and all of this kind of stuff. But then when I looked at the crowds, they all got their little millennial uniforms on. They're all wearing the sneakers that are the sneakers for this season, right? All the guys had their little plaid shirts because striped shirts, you don't want to wear a striped shirt if you're a good millennial these days. You with me here? So there's certain attributes of being human that at least hopefully we will not overcome anytime soon. Partial answer to your question, sir? Any others? Yes, ma'am.
Could you please explain the big dog phenomenon?
Okay, the big dog phenomenon. I don't know if it's not just dogs. Wolves do the same thing. If you've ever seen a pack of dogs run together or a pack of wolves come together, there is always an alpha dog or an alpha wolf. And the other dogs know who the alpha dog is. And the other dogs, or the other wolves, in some cases will actually approach the alpha dog, lie on their back with their paws in the air, and expose their throat. The message to the alpha dog being, look, this is your show, right? You can kill me if you want, right? I'm not going to challenge you, okay? And many of us behave the same way in organizations. I remember, I see you trying to answer. Let me explain what I mean. I was recently invited to Nestle headquarters in Switzerland. And the regional vice president, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, which is a huge position within Nestle, and I was doing a presentation to him and his team. Team of maybe about 100 people, something like that. Oh yeah, big team. And before the presentation started, everybody was in the room kind of talking to each other and whatever. And the seat at the head of the table was obviously reserved for God, if you excuse the expression. The minute he walked into the room, everybody's behavior changed. They all became highly deferential. The humor disappeared. Everybody was doing everything they could to show what a good little corporate person they were. Why? Because their future is dependent upon this gentleman's opinion of them. Okay? The bottom line is they turned themselves in the same thing. They all rolled over on their backs, put their paws in the air, and said, "You're the boss. You can ship me whenever you want, and you can pay me whatever you think I'm worth." You guys with me here? That's what we call the alpha dog phenomenon. Answer your partially? Yeah? Yes, ma'am.
Now, you said that we can make people think the way we want. So that means that they're not only the inherent.
I'm sorry, we can make people.
How to.
Can you speak a little? Put the mic. No, just put the center of the microphone in front of your mouth.
Yeah.
There we go.
How to create or manipulate desires? What are the major techniques?
Oh, now. If I was going to tell you that there, you wouldn't be wanting to come to Holt anymore. Come on, I got to hold a few secrets back to get you to pay that tuition, young lady. Come on now. My kids got to eat too.
Just an example I wanted.
Okay, a specific example of what? Of how we get people to do what we want them to do? Let me give you the cosmetics industry. Okay? Every day, I give you a couple of examples. Every day, a lot of women get up in the world and they smear stuff all over their face. Put some black stuff around their eyes and some red wax or pink wax or whatever color wax it is on their lips. Paint all kinds of weird colors on their fingernails or toenails. Why do they do this? Why do they do this? Can you tell me? Because they think it's going to make them more attractive. That's why they do it. Okay? And so what do? We tell them that you're ugly if you don't do it. Okay? As an R&B group said years ago, they make me feel so damned unpretty. That's their business. Because if you know you're naturally beautiful, you don't need to buy any stuff to put on your face. The only reason you're going to buy that stuff at very expensive prices and do it day after day after day is it so that when you take your makeup off and you look at yourself in the mirror, you go, "Darn, you're ugly." When you're not. Let me give you another example, one more, one of my favorites. And some of you might not agree with this, but I'll throw it out there anyway. I think one of the greatest products ever invented is deodorant. Deodorant. We convince you that if you don't spray this stuff or smear this stuff in your armpits every day, that you're going to smell bad. You with me? I would argue you're not going to smell bad. You're going to smell human. But we have taught people that smelling human means smelling bad, and therefore I create a problem, as Martin Luther King used to say, I create a problem to which only I have the solution. You with me? And then I sell you that solution, and I go ka-ching, 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 all the way to the bank, day after day after day. A couple of examples.
Thank you.
You're welcome, madam. Any other comments before I turn the stage over? Okay, well, once again, thank you very much for your welcome, folks. And if you want to have a chat, I'll be around if anybody wants a little bit of information either on Holt or any of the other schools. Thank you.